Hello everyone, happy spooky season, and welcome to ProGuides Weekly News Recap, the series where we keep you up to date on everything in League current events. In this last week, there's been tons of stuff going on, and we're gonna talk about it all today. We've got your Worlds updates, some more info on Wild Rift, and one of the most famous game designers is leaving Riot. We've got all that and more to talk about today. And for today's question of the day, which League character will I be cosplaying as for Halloween? But first, let's talk about what's going on with PreSeason 11 item reworks. We've already extensively covered the new item system in our previous videos, but with barely over a week of testing, Riot is already eating up the player feedback and churning out some changes to match what's being asked of them. The first set of changes being made to the shop are quality of life and ease of navigation focused. The first of these is adding a stat filter to the shop. On the live servers for the game, we have the option to click a stat to filter the shop to show only those items. On the PvE, the new item shop lacked that feature, instead requiring you to type the stat name into the search bar. Once this change goes through, it'll work just like it does in the live server. The second quality of life change is adding quick access to inventory and showing gold in the shop. Like before, this feature is already available on the live servers, but for some reason, with the PreSeason item shop, you can't see your gold nor your inventory, forcing you to click the items on your HUD if you want to sell something. Or you can look at the same place to see how much gold you have. It's much more intuitive to include both of those things in the shop window, so this is another warmly welcomed adjustment. The last of these changes doesn't really affect ease of navigation, but is just aimed at making mythic items visually match the power that they already give you. It's not just that they are updating the icons' artworks too. They'll also be animated to really set them apart from plain old legendary items. Aesthetics and quality of life aside, we also got some pretty big news about brand new stuff being added to the mix. For starters, with items with on-hit damage are going to have that damage benefit from lifesteal. This is huge for champs like Teemo and Kog'Maw, but Mark Yetter specified that it is item damage only. Damage from champion kits does not apply here, so no, Vayne won't be God tier with this change alone. The second big announcement was an update on support mythics. While Locket of the Iron Solari and Shirelia's Battle Song are remaining pretty much unchanged, Moonstone Renewer is getting a buff to its stats, with the HP going from 150 to 200, and it's also getting 40 AP tacked on. The current three existing mythics provide an ample amount of utility, with the choices of extra engage, healing over time, or shielding and durability. What about when you want an offensive option? Maybe you're playing a mage support like Lux, or an aggressive support like Leona, or even just Battle Soraka, and you want something that gives you damage. Well, the new Imperial Mandate may be just what you're looking for. It comes with 40 ability power, 200 HP, 25 ability haste, and 100% base mana regen. This passive makes it so that if you hit an enemy with an ability that slows or immobilizes, that ability does an extra 80 to 140 bonus damage and marks the enemy for 4 seconds. If an ally deals damage to the marked target, the bonus damage is repeated. And both you and the ally gain 30% movement speed for 2 seconds. This passive has a 6-second cooldown per champ, meaning you can potentially tag the entire enemy team and then do it again. That's a lot of free movement speed and damage in a teamfight. So who is this item for? And when should you build it? Well, first we'll talk about the who. Any champ with relatively low cooldown CCing abilities can use this. Leona, Soraka, Lux, Thresh. Pretty much all supports can use the item, but bear in mind, by building this over Locket on a tanky support, you're sacrificing a huge amount of durability for damage, something you can't afford if you're the main frontline on your team. Someone like Soraka can make a lot of use of it, with every Q proccing the ability, with the movement speed even being useful for escaping the enemy engages and gank attempts. But then you're giving up all that OP Moonstone Renewer healing. I'm not saying you shouldn't try experimenting with this item on champs like those, but just keep in mind that those things do matter too. With all that said, the champs this will definitely be best on are the champs that don't have a lot of healing or need to be frontliners themselves. That narrows it down to the mage supports that either don't synergize well with the other mage mystics, or that just don't want to pay the steeper prices that the standard mage mythics cost. For example, Zyra will probably still want Liandry's, since that burn damage just goes too well with her kit. But Lux, who doesn't really synergize particularly well with the other items, also has a snare and slow to proc Imperial Mandate's passive, and will probably go best with that new item. Again, this is all just my opinion, but these items aren't even fully set in stone yet. Remember, your feedback is extremely valuable, and many of these changes are being done because Riot has heard our requests and feedback. So be sure to be vocal about the changes that you want to see before the item changes are final. And while that's all on beta for Preseason 11, another beta we're interested in is Wild Rifts, the mobile version of League of Legends. It originally rolled out in the Philippines and Southeast Asia, and it's now been confirmed to have expanded to South Korea and Japanese audiences. Along with expanding to more players and regions, a total of 26 new skins have been added to the beta. But I really want you guys to check out the splash art and model for Gothic Orianna for Wild Rift. When you compare to what we have on the regular League servers, you can't help but think, right, why don't you love us too? This isn't the first time fans have pointed out the massive quality differences between the artwork of Wild Rift and plain old League of Legends Summoner's Rift. So maybe we'll be getting some of those fancy new splash arts for ourselves. On the topic of skins, have you seen the new Storm Dragon Lee Sin skin? It's absolutely sick, and in my opinion has some of the best looking visuals in the game. But the skin is more than just visually appealing. Many claim that due to the crazy particles being so flashy and extra, that they don't even look like Lee's original animations, and you can't really tell what he's doing. When combined with other champions like Volibear specifically that have similar particles, it can get even more confusing. So while the skin definitely hits the mark on the coolness factor, the plaintiffs ask that it be toned down a bit for better readability. What do you think? Should Riot reduce the visual impact of the skin for more clarity, or leave it as it is? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Now let's talk some esports. First of all, looking at Worlds, there was some recent controversy over a Syndra bug in G2's game against Suning. In the game, many claimed Caps' Syndra ult appeared to do less damage than intended, or even no damage at all, with many commenters on both Reddit and Twitter trying to prove or disprove the claim. Some have even claimed the bug has been an ongoing issue for quite some time. In the end, none of the players called for a pause. The math seems to check out, and the results of the game have remained in Suning's favor. As for the standings at Worlds, I'm unpleasantly unsurprised to say that NA is once again pretty much all but doomed. Unless through some miraculous last-minute run and FlyQuest can get second in Group D, it's looking over. With Liquid eliminated and TSM gone, I think we're just back to hoping that maybe, just maybe, Cloud9, NA's one true hope at Worlds, makes it to the big stage next year. And this is why they call NA a wildcard region. And looking away from Worlds and towards Oceania, the OPL, or Oceanic Pro League, was founded 5 years ago, establishing a Riot-governed tournament league akin to the LCS, LEC, etc., aimed at letting top players in the region compete as professional players. Sadly, due to the league not quite hitting the mark and being financially unsustainable, it was announced that the OPL would be dissolved. And as a result, Riot's Sydney office will also see closure, since its primary function was operating the league. But not all hope is lost for aspiring pros and their fans in the land down under. Riot wants to continue supporting esports in the Oceanic region. Beginning with the 2021 season, Oceania will be considered part of the competitive territory for the LCS, so OCE players can be brought to NA without actually taking up an import slot. While NA may be the worst of the big 4 regions, it's definitely a step up from OCE, meaning this change may actually be better than the previous situations for the best of the best in the OCE, giving them a better training ground to further develop their skills. And of course, for those that do remain as competitors in Oceania, there will still be qualified tournaments for both MSI and Worlds 2021 to give teams a chance to represent the region at the 2 major global events next year. In other Riot-related news, 2 huge faces of the company, Morello and New 001, have just announced their departure. For those that don't know, Morello was a lead designer at Riot for some time now, working on League of Legends upwards of 10 years. With the end of his career, they're being spent on Valorant. He announced his departure via Twitter, stating that he can't quite announce what his next move is yet. While you probably recognize him as Joe, the face of Riot Please before SafeLocked took over, New 001 was the executive vice president of League. Like Morello, he too announced his departure via Twitter, expressing his bittersweet emotions over leaving the company and community that he loves so much, while assuring us that we are in good hands with the rest of the Riot team. He was a bit less vague than Morello, saying, "Starting a new game studio from scratch is going to be a wild ride. I hope to make more games you care enough to tell me how terrible I am at balancing them." But that's where the teaser ends. If you're a fan of either New 007 or Morello, you'll have to follow them on Twitter to see what new and exciting projects they'll be working on in the coming months. We've pretty extensively covered all of the info on Seraphine since she was first leaked months ago, and while there's no real news as the actual champ being added to the game, Riot has been steadily putting out the KDA comic, with issue number 5 recently releasing. So if you care for the backstory on the characters in League, be sure to check it out. If you're more concerned with actually getting to play Seraphine, make sure you're subbed to the channel and have those notifications on so that you can stay up to date on what she does and how to play her like a pro the second we know anything about her. And before we go, if you're an Amazon Prime member, be sure to check Prime Gaming for your free Prime shard. You don't want to miss out on free loot. And that's all the news we have for you this week. Be sure to sub to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of our videos and know exactly what's going on in and out of game with League of Legends. See you back at the next video, but until then, good luck on the Rift, stay safe, and wash your hands.